Wednesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. More he said, she said with the latest Deshaun Watson civil allegations. Deshaun Watson's attorney, Rusty Hardin, issued a statement. Deshaun strongly denies the allegation in the Jane Doe lawsuit filed Monday. We have asked him not to comment further on this matter as it works its way through the courts. We are comfortable he will ultimately be vindicated. We're ready to defend this case in court at the appropriate time. Don't intend to conduct our defense in the media. We would ask people be patient while the legal process runs its course. Meantime, Deshaun Watson's going to focus his energy and concentration on football. Watson, media availability today, was asked about the allegations.
The statement is the response that we talked about, and everything that he put in that statement is exactly what how I'm feeling and what we're going through this process with.
How do you not let this become a distraction as you prepare for Jacksonville?
I focus on football. I focus on keeping the main thing, and that's when I walk into this building, focusing on being the best quarterback I can be, on the game plan, and trying to be better than we were last week so we can get a W. Like I mentioned Sunday, I don't like to make excuses or anything like that. Those 3 hours, 4 hours we're on the field, I got to lock in and do my craft and execute my plan as a quarterback. So, again, I'm not going to sit up here and make any excuses for anything that's off the field. Is what's causing on the field. So, I just got to be better this week, and I will be better, and we're going to continue to grow each and every week to, get to where we want to ultimately be at the end of the year.
And Watson referring to the fact that his father passed away late last week as well. Let's welcome in Sam Monson, 33rd team, as well as co-host of the Check the Mic podcast. Sam, it's more off the field distractions, and right now they got to figure it out on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really the biggest thing is we've been talking before. Deshaun Watson is everything to this team's fortunes right now. They have a very good roster top to bottom. There's a lot of talent there, but this team is going to go as far as Deshaun Watson takes them. And right now, everything about Watson is a negative on the Browns, whether it's on the field, off the field. There's just issues all over the place.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. There's no way to defend what went on from the quarterback play against the Cowboys. Herm Edwards, former NFL head coach, defensive guy, gave his assessment of what he saw from Watson week one.
He looked like a quarterback, deer in headlights. It was almost, the game was almost like too big for him. I was surprised, to be quite honest. Yeah. I thought going into this game, they're playing at home. They're playing against a Dallas Cowboy team that basically can't run the football because they didn't acquire a runner. Ezekiel Elliott's not the same guy he was, and Dallas beat him in all three phases. And Deshaun Watson, when you look at what he did today, turned the ball over, he didn't look poised at all in this game. He looked like a rookie quarterback. And now he's got to fix it. He owned it. He said this is one game, which is correct, it's one game, but you cannot let this continue to look like this or they're going to be in trouble.
Sam, when I look at that, it was like they almost couldn't decide, are we in Ken Dorsey's spread offense that we're kind of trying to build around Deshaun Watson, or are we going back to Kevin Stefanski's offense under center, play action? They're trying to marry them, and it looked like they couldn't figure out which they wanted to do when.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I also think that they are desperately trying to figure out what the offense needs to be to make Deshaun Watson's life easier, to try and maximize what he can do. And sometimes when you really desperately are trying to sort of simplify or streamline a system, trying to help a quarterback out, you actually end up making his life more difficult because you take away a lot of the advantages that offenses have schematically by trying to slim down what you're asking of the quarterback and reducing his workload and reducing everything that he has to do on a down-to-down basis. And that actually ends up having the exact opposite effect to the one you wanted to have. You end up making his life more difficult by reducing the ways that an offense sort of steals a march on defense. So I think that's part of it, that they're basically lost to this point, trying to figure out what the offense needs to look like for Deshaun Watson to play his best football.
This is also this is from the 33rd team, which you work for. Best and worst offensive lines at protecting quarterback from pressure week 1. Least pressure allowed. Dolphins, Saints, Steelers, and Cowboys. That's who the Browns went against, and the Bengals. All 22.9% or less. Most pressures allowed. Broncos, Patriots, Browns at 42.9, Vikings, and Eagles. So that tells you a little bit, and again, you were playing without a couple of your linemen that you would like to have in Wills and Conklin, but you still had 4 of the 5 starters that are likely going to be out there.
Yeah, and what that doesn't tell you is, the impact of the scheme and the quarterback on those numbers. PFF charted Deshaun Watson for being directly responsible for 5 of those pressures, which is, 22% of the total pressures that they gave up. And then there's an additional layer of pressure that Deshaun Watson contributed to by holding onto the ball for an extremely long time. You look at the difference in average time to throw between Dallas, for example, and Cleveland, and it's night and day. Dallas and Dak Prescott got the ball out of their hands quickly because they knew they were going up against guys like Myles Garrett, whereas Deshaun Watson held onto the ball, and consequently Micah Parsons and the rest of that Dallas defense were able to have a field day and really generate a ton of pressure against, it was the starters primarily that gave up a lot of that pressure, not necessarily the backups that were coming in. So yeah, a problem across the board where the scheme, what it is, and Deshaun Watson playing quarterback, it's making the offensive line part of the problem as well.
Do you think, and again, we're probably trying to read tea leaves here, is some of that because Watson's holding on the ball to try to make a play, or is it because he's not quite comfortable with the reads and what they're running yet?
I think Watson has always tended to be that type of quarterback. His average time to throw has always been one of the longest in the NFL, even when he was playing his best football. So I think it's just part of the package with Deshaun Watson. He's always going to hold on to the ball a long time. And when he's playing at his best, it can be a positive thing. He can extend the play, he can evade pressure, and he can find somewhere to go with the football. Right now, it's not. He's not able to evade the pressure, find somewhere to go with the ball and make a play. It's just stressing the pass protection, and he's just inviting more pressure, which is only increasing the problems that he's dealing with because he isn't able to find somewhere sensible to go with the football most of the time now. So I think it can be a positive for him when he's playing his best, but right now it's definitely a negative.
A lot of roster movement for the Browns. We'll also take a look at some practice notes as well. So Scott Petrek tells us David Njoku not practicing. Jedrick Wills, who Kevin Stefanski thought might be out there, did not practice. Miles Harden not practicing as well. Now, there were some roster moves. The Browns placed Mahoud Diabate, linebacker, on the injured list. So they got to miss at least 4 games on the injured list. Tony Fields also on the injured list. Maurice Hurst on the injured list. Juan Thornhill, who was injured a lot of last year, on the injured list again with a calf. To the active roster, they signed David Bell, Mike Ford, who was here last year, Kalike Hudson from the Saints practice squad, and Sam Kamara, defensive tackle from the practice squad. Then signed to the practice squad, Siaka Ika, Jeff Swaim, a tight end who has played some in the league, and Villiane, who is a linebacker from the Vikings. The note there, David Njoku not on the IR, so he doesn't have to miss 4 games. And then what do you think they get in Swain? That's a guy guys have probably heard of him. He played for the Seahawks for a while. Type of tight end he might be.
Yeah, I think it's really a case of emergency additions to try and cover for a guy like David Njoku. You're not going to replace the type of impact you're getting from David Njoku with somebody that you're picking up, right now or activating late into the season. These are just so you have the bodies available, right? The types of you can run certain plays knowing that you have those players active on game day, and you don't have to remove entire sections of the playbook. But there's absolutely no replacing a guy like David Njoku with the type of dynamic playmaker that he's become over the last year and a half or so in particular.
Yep. Only good news is IR tends to make you believe they think he will be back in less than 4 games. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
Yeah, I listened to a caller the other day who said he'd wish he'd let Dorsey call the plays and just become a coach. My opinion, I wish the gentleman would quit, Stefanski that is, but that won't happen. But he's kind of right. The defense was getting torched. Special teams stunk. You had 200 million penalties going on. Nothing was going right. You ran your same old offense. Maybe different man in there calling the plays might help. I mean, we did have Van Pelt. He wasn't the greatest in the world. He was called your offensive coordinator, but all of a sudden you get rid of him for what I don't know, to try to change something different, and you don't get any better. But yet Van Pelt went, and okay, he didn't put up big numbers. He had nobody at quarterback, but he ended up beating Cincinnati. I don't know. Everything seems to deflect off our coach, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. Take care, guys.
So I always appreciate all the voicemails. 4 turnovers will do that, but that's neither here nor there. Cincinnati turned the ball over 4 times. Sam, I think fans in general think that the play caller is like the sole responsibility, and that might be the move at some point in time. I don't think they're anywhere close to doing, hey, Ken Dorsey, get in there and call plays.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right earlier when you said, look, it feels at the moment like there is some kind of halfway house between Stefanski's offense, Dorsey's offense, and they're trying to create like a new system, a new melding of those two. Whereas in reality, we already know that Deshaun Watson and Stefanski's system is not working, doesn't work, is not a great fit for him. So if the conclusion is the way to rescue Deshaun Watson's play right now is to completely change systems, is to give him something different to work with, and Ken Dorsey is that. Ken Dorsey is bringing that type of knowledge and type of system and scheme with him, then the conclusion has to be we go all in with that. We give him total control of the offense. This is what we're going to be running. Either do it or don't. Trying to kind of halfway do it is unlikely to work for anybody. It's not going to get the best out of Watson. It's not going to make Dorsey or Stefanski look good. And you're just going to end up with this compromised system that's not working for any of them.
Sam Monson from the 33rdteam.com, as well as co-host of the Check the Mic podcast. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, be right back to stay with us.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s. $10 each. 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns with Sam Monson from the 33rd Team. He's also co-host of Check the Mic podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Gentlemen, good afternoon. This is Ted from the Greenville Browns backers in South Carolina. The Browns defense and offense were terrible in week 1, and special teams for that matter. I hope that we have some upgrades for week 2, and I do believe that we have to do something about Deshaun Watson. Do you think that there's a replacement on the way within our 2 backups, or do we need to sign someone else in the meantime to back up those 2? Thanks again. Have a wonderful rest of the day. I love the show. Stay well.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Sam, they got to get an answer on Deshaun Watson. They won't punt on this year necessarily, but one game isn't an answer. If it's not Deshaun Watson, it's Jameis Winston. That's a guy that's won decent amount of games in this league, was a former number 1 overall pick, has played a lot of NFL football.
Yeah, I mean, at this stage, the concerning thing is we've seen no improvement, no signs of life, no suggestion that Deshaun Watson is going to come out of the other side of this and not even become the player that he used to be in Houston, but get somewhere between the two. Right now, he is a bottom 5 starting quarterback in the NFL, and we're not seeing any signs of him getting back to being a top 5 quarterback where he used to be. But if he just split the difference and he was somewhere middle of the pack, this team is good enough to be a contender with that type of quarterback play. And we're seeing no signs that that is going to happen. We're not talking about going on a run of games, whether he can do it for an individual game. Against Dallas, we were like, there was one nice throw. There was a touchdown pass. There was a really nice throw. Pretty much everything else was bad. So if that's where we are, really the question becomes, okay, if Watson is not going to work out, how when do we make the switch? When do we effectively write it off, say it's a sunk cost? The money is committed to him. There's nothing we can do about that. At some point, we'll figure out when to, make the cut and switch and really shift the dead money into the salary cap. But for now, when do we decide to go with Jameis Winston? Because Jameis Winston is capable of average NFL quarterback play. Okay, it'll be volatile, average NFL quarterback play, but he's capable of that kind of performance, and that's could be good enough for the rest of this team to take them to the postseason, to make them into general threats with Winston as the quarterback. So I don't know how many more games Watson has left playing at this kind of level before they really have to think about making that switch.
The one thing is, once you make that switch, Deshaun Watson's kind of done. It's not like you can, let's go to James. Oh no, let's bring him back. It's definitive, and you're gonna go in a different direction. So I would guess they're gonna give it some time, but I don't know that you can punt on the season. Along those lines, panic meter for teams after week 1. This from the Bleacher Report. For the Browns, they say 7 out of 10. Is there a chance the return of Wills, Conklin, and Chubb eventually will right the offense? Sure, but there's a chance the offense continues to look sluggish and erratic. Time is running out on the Watson era of the Cleveland offense. Yeah, that's absolutely fair.
Yeah, and you look at the return of those 2 tackles and Nick Chubb, I don't think is transforming what we saw at the weekend into a much better situation if Deshaun Watson keeps playing at this level. I mean, that's the problem that they're dealing with, is everything is the quarterback. If he's playing averagely, the rest of this team is good enough that we can win some games. If he's playing like a bottom 5 quarterback, it doesn't matter. And that's just the reality of today's NFL. Bottom 5 quarterback play is too bad to overcome, and that's where he is right now. So that's why I think the panic meter has to be pretty high, because Watson is not showing signs that he's going to make that jump.
Well, and here's one of the reasons why. Let's take a look at this. This is average QB accuracy and separation chart. X-axis is average separation. Y-axis is accuracy rate. So across your screen is separation, and that means Browns receivers had some separation. Up and down is the accuracy, and you want to be up high, not down low. And, Deshaun Watson is down there pretty low. Watson talked about kind of the Browns and adjusting to this new offensive idea.
It's going to be a work in progress for sure. I think, new pieces, new guys, first live football together. It's going to take time. A lot of times if you haven't been with the guys for multiple years, especially the core group of, skill guys, then it's going to take a little bit to figure out, all right, what is everyone good at? What are we good at? What are the identity that we want to put out there on the field? And, it might take a couple weeks, and we might find our identity this week. I think each and every week is a great opportunity for us to, go out there and test ourselves against a very, very, very good opponent in Jacksonville in a great environment, and go out there and see what we can put out there and try to get a W.
Sam, whatever they did last week didn't work, so they can take those pages out of the playbook and move on to different ones.
Yeah, but the problem is they're running out of pages in the playbook that haven't already failed. So I think that's the issue. Watson was very inaccurate in this game. Again, in the past, he's been an accurate quarterback. This is not somebody that always struggles with basic accuracy, with basic throwing of the football. He's somebody that at his best, or even just his baseline, has been actually a pretty accurate quarterback. So for that to be a part of the problem now, just sort of highlights that everything is in a bad spot in terms of that passing game. It's not any one thing, it's all of it.
and I didn't look close enough. His mechanics at times last year were a mess. I didn't see that he was, it looked like he was setting up, letting it rip, and it was going 15 yards off target to me. But I didn't go back and look. Any thoughts of if his mechanics are a mess or any of that?
No, I mean, obviously, when you're missing wide open targets, something is breaking down mechanically in your throwing motion. But it's not like you can look at him and say, okay, here's the 3 ways that his golf swing is broken down, and this is why he's missing all these throws in a given way. Like, he's just, again, it's just out of sync. He's just not where he needs to be, throwing in rhythm, throwing kind of correctly, and putting the ball on its intended target. He's out of sorts right now, throwing the football as well as executing the offense, running the plays, diagnosing what he's seeing, and correctly hitting his targets.
Can that snap? I mean, it doesn't seem to me like that's something that comes and miraculously goes from 180 this way to 180 that way. Am I wrong in assuming that it can't be like, oh, light bulb's on, it's fixed?
No, I mean, I think the throwing mechanics thing is a symptom rather than a cause. If and when he gets back into a groove and the offense is functioning, I think Watson will start throwing the football accurately again, and we'll see him mechanically kind of the way he used to be, and with a much higher accuracy rate and all those kinds of things. As for, can they actually get this offense firing with him as quarterback? We're seeing less and less evidence that that's likely. And they're trying everything they can think of, bringing in new coaches. As we said, maybe the answer is to go completely in that direction as opposed to this sort of steps in that direction with Ken Dorsey, the way they seem to be at the moment. But it's difficult to see how they can get from where they have been to where they need to go within a season, based off how little evidence there has been so far that Watson is going to come out of the other side of this.
So this is the amount of pre-snap motion on pass plays from week 1. And we thought one of the things that the Browns might do is incorporate more of that. That's one of the things they were working on that we heard. Didn't use much of it. In fact, it was the lowest in the NFL. 12% of pre-snap motion, Broncos 21, Panthers 23, Bengals 28, Titans 29. So again, the pre-snap motion, you're trying to find easy throws. Can you identify leverage mismatch? Can you identify a mismatch? Like it's aimed at getting you easy answers.
Yeah, and so this is an example of what we mentioned before, I think, where in an attempt to help your quarterback and simplify what the offense is doing, you actually end up making his life more difficult. I think that the lack of pre-snap motion was an attempt to kind of spread everything out, give Deshaun Watson the easiest reads possible, and simplify what they were asking to do. But the downside of that, the flip side, the other side of the coin is, well, now you take away what is one of the most powerful edges that offense has over defense in today's NFL. The reason that so many of these good teams are using pre-snap motion is because it works and it causes defense problems, and it can force them to identify certain things before the snap to the quarterback. And yeah, you now need your quarterback to read those things and make the correct adjustment and decision based off that information, but it's a net win. Like, getting that information is way more important than the difficulty that he's going to have to take in all that information and make that decision and adjustment on the fly. So I think it's an example of why it's very difficult to pull yourself out of this kind of spiral, because everything you do to try and fix it and make it better ends up actually having the reverse effect. It ends up actually compounding the problem and making it even more difficult, because you're taking away things that you expect a normal quarterback to do, which helps him play better football.
Sam Monson from 33rd Team and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout, other side of the break, back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little defense for the Browns. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C. where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Sam Monson from the 33rd team, as well as the co-host of the Check the Mic podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, this is regarding to our defense. I'm just wondering, are we sure that Jim Schwartz is the reason the defense did so much better last year, or did Andrew Berry going out and bringing in Zadarius Smith and Dalvin Tomlinson and Obo Okunronquo and Maurice Hurst? Maybe that's the reason why the pass rush got so much better. And the other thing I'm wondering about that is we still get burned for deep plays. Anytime we try to go zone, we still haven't corrected this. It happened with Woods, and this happened with Schwartz, and they're still getting burned. They're still not communicating. So I hadn't really seen much of a change there. Just wanted y'all's thoughts on that. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. This is Daryl from Dixon.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Sam, Jim Schwartz's defense is high risk, high reward. You're going to, anytime you pin your ears back and get after the quarterback, you're putting your guys in a spot, and you're going to give up some big plays. But you're going to get sacks, and you're going to get pressures, and you're going to create a lot of negative plays.
Yeah, and it's like anything. The answer is never 100% one thing, 0% the other. It's a combination of both. I think Jim Schwartz's defensive scheme absolutely helped maximize what Cleveland had last year and turn that into one of the best defenses in the NFL. But it's also true to say if they hadn't made all those upgrades from personnel, it wouldn't have made that kind of impact. The difference between Myles Garrett rushing on his own and Myles Garrett rushing alongside Zadarius Smith and Okoronkwo, and even Maurice Hurst when he was playing last season before, obviously he got hurt in week 1 this year. But that makes a difference. Those guys are able to transform and make an impact on top of what the scheme is doing. And, against Dallas, sometimes good offense is going to beat good defense. I mean, we saw Denzel Ward blanket covering CeeDee Lamb, and a perfect pass from Dak Prescott got the ball in there anyway, deep down the field. So, sometimes really high-end defense can still get beaten if the offense makes the right plays.
So this from PFF, observations every NFL team after week 1 for the Browns. Only Brian Branch could match the 3 pass breakups that the aforementioned Denzel Ward managed this week. And then let's also look Greg Newsome in week 1, PFF grade. His grade, a 78.0, ninth among cornerbacks, 25 coverage snaps, 8 receiving yards allowed, and 1 forced incompletion. So it gets lost in the fact that they gave up a bunch of points. Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome played pretty well in that secondary.
Yeah, I mean, Denzel Ward in particular, I think was fantastic. He was breaking up passes all day long. That pass we mentioned that got through, that was basically the one big play that he gave up in the day. I think he was targeted 7 times. He gave up 40 yards, most of which came on that play. And you would say, watching that play, he's in tight coverage the entire way. Like that is good coverage that got beaten by a better pass and a better catch at the end. And that was the worst thing that happened to Denzel Ward in that game. I thought that was a real sort of statement from Ward that he is back as being one of the best corners in the game. And then Greg Newsome, I thought, was really good as well. He got a pass breakup on CeeDee Lamb in the slot on a slant route and was generally in pretty tight coverage underneath as well. So, yeah, a good game by both those guys. The one of the top 3 corners that struggled was Martin Emerson, I think. The other 2 had fantastic games.
So this also from the 33rd team, lowest percentage of pass rush snaps with pressure in week 1. Jaguars were lowest at 14.3, then the Panthers 15.4, Browns 20%, Falcons and Patriots. Now the Jaguars were going against the Dolphins, Browns going against Miami. So getting the ball out quick kind of affects the pressure rate as well. And I think when you look at Jacksonville, that's one of the reasons. Same thing, Dak Prescott, I was disappointed that 2 rookies on the offensive line starting, and they were able to scheme around it.
Yeah, you're right. Average time to pass is a huge influencing factor on that kind of pressure thing. And in particular, I think Dallas went into that game knowing that they were going to have to get the ball out of their hands quickly because they had a rookie left tackle going up against Myles Garrett, who's arguably the best pass rusher in the game. So Myles Garrett still won a few times going up against Tyler Guyton, the rookie, but that ball was out quickly, consistently, time after time by Prescott. I think Cooper Beebe might be a different story at center. I think he might actually just be very good right out of the gate and not a problem, not somebody that you're going to attack and expose throughout the game. But Tyler Guyton, I think if they hadn't had the kind of help and protection of a quick game, was probably going to give up a lot of pressure in that game to Myles Garrett, and it would have been a much bigger factor. And then, the flip side is what we talked about earlier. The Browns held on to the ball a long time. So Micah Parsons and the rest of that Dallas pass rush was able to rack up a lot of pressures and influence the game a lot more because they had, 0.7 of a second on average more than to rush the passer than the Browns did. And that's a lot when you're talking about, time to actually influence the quarterback.
Sam Monson from the 33rd team, co-host of the Check the Mic podcast. Now I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We'll also look ahead a little bit to the Jaguars. Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Sam Monson from the 33rd team, co-host of the Check the Mic podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Glenn from Berea, and I know the Houston and Dallas scores aren't totally the fault of the defense, but in general, do you think those games have provided a blueprint to other teams for how the Browns defense can be defeated? Thank you for taking my call. Bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. There's probably a little bit of truth to that, Sam, but the thing I would say is how many teams have C.J. Stroud and Dak Prescott? That had a little bit to do with it. Now, Browns have to make some adjustments because there were a couple of things that you saw that were similar.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think that there is a way to attack this defense. As you say, not every team is equipped to do that. Not every team has the personnel to be able to attack it that way. And then the other element that influences the defense is the Browns offense not being able to sustain drives and, keep the ball and put up points and hold up its end of the bargain makes the defense's life more difficult as well. So, yeah, I do think that there is a way now of attacking this Browns defense, and it's not going to be the all-conquering unit or maybe even one of the best defenses in the NFL long term or over the course of the season, unless the offense is able to up its game and actually make it a more even fight on both sides of the ball and give the defense some more respite.
All right, so Brian Baldinger, former NFL offensive lineman, a little bit of a film breakdown here from Trevor Lawrence, touchdown pass to the Jaguars' rookie wide receiver Brian Thomas.
So Jacksonville is up 7-0 right here, late second quarter. That's Brian Thomas Jr. right there, their first round pick. And right here, this is a Tampa 2 look. David Long's got him. And look at this adjustment to the ball, getting behind the underneath defender and then adjusting to it for his first NFL touchdown. He's so fluid. He's just so smooth in everything he does. This route right here, he's going to attack the middle linebacker, all right, and then he's going to stair step and cross his face, and Trevor's looking for him all the way. But this move right here to adjust to the ball, watch his hands. Quick hands, knows exactly where he's at on that field, knows exactly where he's at on the field. Man, he's special. He's going to be a good player. He's going to be good in this offense.
It's a heck of a throw by Trevor Lawrence, and that's a guy that's kind of trying to figure it out as well as a young quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really nice play by Brian Thomas. I think Baldy's right. It was the adjustment at the end in particular, I think, was the most impressive part of it. I think he kind of realized he was running into a safety and was able to, at full speed, make that slight adjustment beyond him and get to where the ball was going to be thrown. That was an absolutely ridiculous throw. I mean, as Baldinger said, it's the Tampa 2 look. There's supposed to be a safety right there. That's throwing the ball right into the top of that safety's coverage. And it's not like he has the entire field to defend. There's a cap. The end zone takes away, it limits how deep that guy needs to get. There are times where, the Tampa 2 safety's got to defend vertically as far as you can go. Here, the end zone is stopping how far he needs to back up, and he's still beaten over the top by that ball. When he first put that in the air, if you look at the sideline view, the all-22 view, it does not look like a throw that's on. It doesn't look like there's space to put that ball in there. Mike Renner, formerly of PFF, now CBS Sports, I mean, he posted the same view that Baldy did, the all-22, and said, look at when that ball is released, where Brian Thomas is. Again, does not look like there's any way they're going to connect where they connected in the end zone. A genuinely fantastic throw from Lawrence, and to his new receiver, and a guy who does look like he has the fluid movement skills to be a really high impact player at this level.
So when you look at Jacksonville, what are some of the things the Browns need to be concerned about? That was a back and forth game with the Dolphins that they played, real close one.
Yeah, they've got athletes all over the field, and that's something that Trent Baalke, their personnel guy, has targeted as coveted above all else, and sometimes to their detriment. Trayvon Walker, the number 1 pick, they could have had Aiden Hutchinson, who's a lesser athlete but a better football player. So it hasn't always worked out to their advantage, but it does mean that the team is stuffed full of amazing athletes who can cause insane problems when they put the play together. And we saw that last week with Trayvon Walker. His sack, his sort of the impact sack that he made, as opposed to the play where he just happened to be near a quarterback that was sliding down. That's an incredible play. Like, he absolutely annihilated the right tackle, got under his shoulder pads, drove him back, and then leapt clean over the top of him to grab the quarterback and finish the play. That's the problem on any given snap for anybody trying to block that guy. And, that's true for Trayvon Walker. It's true for Josh Hines-Allen on the other side as well. And then the receivers, the guys, Brian Thomas, who we just highlighted, but also the other receivers that they have as well are dynamic athletes. Those are guys that are not necessarily the best wide receivers in the NFL, but they are all impressive athletes and difficult to defend because of that. Because if you switch off, if you have a lapse, those are guys that can punish you in an instant. So I think the general athletic ability of that team is very impressive, and that just makes them dangerous on any given play.
When you look at some areas that you think the Browns need to take advantage of, Browns need to win. The stat is, if you fall to 0-2, it is not good relative to making the playoffs percentage-wise. What are some of the things you think the Browns need to take advantage of in order to get a win in Jacksonville?
The Jacksonville offensive line is not great. They're a better pass blocking unit than they are a run blocking unit. So I think generally stopping the run first and foremost will be an important thing, and that's something they should definitely be able to achieve given that offensive line. But when you have guys like Myles Garrett, and Zadarius Smith coming to the table, they should look to attack that offensive line from a pass blocking standpoint as well. And if they can win that trench battle in particular, I think that will give them, a really good chance of winning. That will slow down the Jacksonville offense. It will limit this maybe to a low-scoring game, and then they have an easier task on the other side of the ball to try and put up enough points to win.
Sam Monson, 33rd Team, as well as the Check the Mic podcast. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. I appreciate it, Sam.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Again, Sam Monson, make sure you check him out, 33rdteam.com, and the Check the Mic podcast. He is the co-host, always really good stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Nick Karns from the co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones. Diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s. $10 each. 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Saw you guys' video on Baker Mayfield, and y'all made a comment that he was a bust. I think that's a terrible take, and I can see that Brown fans are feeling real salty about it. But if Baker Mayfield's a bust, Trevor Lawrence is a bust. He has worse stats, and he's the #1 pick also. How are you a bust when you're the Rookie of the Year your first year? He gets a pass just like Trevor Lawrence gets a pass for year 2 with Freddie Kitchens, who hasn't been a head coach since he was fired. Year 3, what does he do? Win 11 games and goes to the playoffs, wins the playoff game, and nearly beats Kansas. And year 4, gets injured week 2 and plays injured. That's it. That's not a bust. Right now, he's playing great. Cleveland would give anything to go back and change that. Keep all their money, keep their draft picks, and keep building with Baker. Yeah, I don't buy your take. It's okay to say you were wrong.
No, I wasn't wrong. If you think Baker Mayfield should have been the #1 overall pick in that draft, you have a terrible take. Should have been Josh Allen. I'd listen to Lamar Jackson. Baker Mayfield, they did a redraft 5 years after the 2018 draft that Baker Mayfield was #1 overall in. Wasn't the first overall pick, wasn't a first-round pick, wasn't a second-round pick. They only did 2 rounds. He wasn't even in it. The reason Baker Mayfield is a bust isn't that he's a bad quarterback. It's that he was taken #1 overall. If he was taken 20, 18, okay, you can live with that. #1 overall picks often end up being busts. They should have had Josh Allen. They should have had Lamar Jackson. They took Baker Mayfield, and now they got to scramble to try to recover from it. Baker Mayfield's also been with 4 teams. A #1 overall pick that's been with 4 teams is a bust. I'm sorry. I don't dislike Baker Mayfield. I think he's a slightly above average to average NFL quarterback. But as a #1 overall pick, he's a bust. Let's welcome in Nick Karns, co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. Nick, I know you are one of the guys that wishes he was back in Cleveland, and I get that. But they messed up the #1 overall pick when they took Baker Mayfield, period.
I guess this has 2 parts. Number one, anytime you're taking a guy #1 overall, you're taking him to be your franchise quarterback, the future of your team for a decade plus. And I very much would agree with you that when they put that set of expectations on Baker, selecting him #1 overall, that's the standard you're holding him to. So you look at it, we're 5 years later now. Is it 6 years?
6 years.
I'm not sure.
It's 6.
6 years. 6 years. Time flies. He's not on the team. And you're right. He did take he did have a couple stops in between getting to the Buccaneers and getting paid by them. So I wouldn't say that Baker's a bad quarterback, but when you put the standard and you look at the other quarterbacks that were available, I guess begrudgingly I got to call that a bust because of what the other two, what Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen have become for their teams and what you were hoping to get and what any team picking #1 overall would hope to get.
Well, and you bring up Trevor Lawrence. He's 20-31 as a starting quarterback. They've never won more than 9 games with him. So it's still, maybe they can rescue it. The point is, #1 overall picks are busts more often than they're not. I mean, Myles Garrett, not a bust. He was #1 overall pick. Joe Burrow, number 1 overall pick. That's the standard that Baker Mayfield gets held to. It may not be fair to him, but that's the standard. And you know what? I'm happy that I don't dislike him even a little. I'm glad he's doing well in Tampa. I have nothing against the guy. But as a number 1 overall pick, bad pick. Shame on the Browns.
You got to wonder if Baker doesn't go on that journey with multiple teams, if he gets to the point where he's at now, because I don't think it would have happened in Cleveland. I think that bridge got thoroughly burned.
Yeah, it did. But you know what? He learned and moved on. It's time for Browns fans to move on as well. You know, he's doing well. Good for him. All right, Tony Rizzo, today, ESPN Cleveland, talking about the Browns offense.
How long are you going to go with this? Where you be, Chris? You be 0-3? You be 0-4? Because there's an offense that Stefanski has that Joe Flacco proved is very effective. And we could run that tomorrow. No, Joe Bitonio didn't forget how to block in Stefanski's zone run scheme.
Right.
At what point do you just say, hey, we're going to have to try and win this year, and we'll worry about Deshaun sometime down the road? How long is that leash? I've heard a month. I've heard after 2 weeks.
Well,
I've heard this whole season.
Nick, they got to get an answer on Deshaun Watson. As painful as it may be, you're going to find out. So I think it's as long as they need to get an answer definitively that, yeah, he's the guy, no, he's not the guy. I was a guy that defended him. I can't defend the stuff I saw in week 1. I just can't.
No, that was about as bad as it could go. I think your nightmare scenario played out on Monday or on Sunday. And to me, now I don't have any inside information on this, but I look at a couple aspects here. You've got an owner who's spending the most money of any in football, and a team that is largely in their prime right now and primed to win now. And I think we saw that last year with the resilience that they showed, overcoming so many injuries and still being able to get to the playoffs. So I look at it, and if it's as bad as we saw against Dallas, I think by the time somewhere in October rolls around, they're just not going to want to see the entire season go into the tank with which they know how much talent they have on the roster. And so if it stays this bad, I want to put some pause out there, because I think about 2020 when Kevin Stefanski debuted as the Browns head coach, and the Baltimore Ravens absolutely smashed the Browns. And that was the season they ended up making the playoffs. It's 1 of 17, even though that was a brutal 1 of 17. So I think they're going to keep putting Deshaun out there. They're going to give him every reason to be successful, to have success. They've tailored the offense to do so. So, but if we fast forward, 3-4 more weeks, and it still looks like bottom tier quarterback play, bottom tier offense, it wouldn't surprise me if they made a change, because Jameis Winston is more suited to that Joe Flacco type offense than Deshaun Watson is.
So what do you think of, we know David Njoku is out this week. We know he is not on the IR, so that leads you to believe 2-3 weeks, not 4 weeks. Because IR would be can't come back for 4 weeks. How important does Jerry Jeudy become with Njoku not being out there? And he was banged up in week 1 a little bit.
Right. I think this is the real value of the addition for the Browns, because with Jeudy, you have somebody that has proven he's flirted with 1,000 yards in a season before. He's had production for the Broncos. And I think as you look at the rest of the Browns wide receiver room, there's a lot of young guys. You look at Cedric Tillman, who is still, you're hoping comes along, and you just drafted Jamari Thrash, and maybe Elijah Moore hasn't given you the type of production that you've exactly wanted yet. But I think aside from Amari Cooper, Jeudy is the one guy in that room that has also proven that he can be productive in the NFL. And I think that's really important, because no slight, no knock on Jordan Akins. He's just not David Njoku. You're not going to get that same type of explosive play. Like David Njoku led all tight ends in yards after the catch last year. And Jordan Akins just isn't that type of guy. Whereas we have seen, it was a very small, good play But seeing Judy catch that touchdown week 1 was encouraging. And I saw that the Browns had the 5th most separation among all receiving groups from week 1. That's from PFF, I believe. And I think Judy's a big part of that. So Amari Cooper's going to be reliable. And I think at least having Judy gives you one more guy that you can absolutely count on.
This is from Pro Football Network, 2024 defensive rankings entering week 2. They go Ravens 1, Browns 2, Jets 3, Niners, Cowboys 4, tied for 4th, and then Steelers 6th, ahead of the Chiefs. I was a little disappointed in the Browns defense. I thought they would have the ability to dominate a little bit more. And again, it's probably scheme. They got ahead, and then Dak Prescott was like, "Yeah, we're not going to let them make any big plays defensively." Got the ball out quick, but I was hoping for a more dominant performance from the Browns defense.
I certainly was too. That first drive where Dalvin Tomlinson sacked Dak was really encouraging, and I think the week 1 performance to me really comes down to a few key plays. The miscommunication that happened, I'm not sure if it was on Juan Thornhill, but letting Brandon Cooks basically waltz to that touchdown. Dak checks into that play. That was miscommunication, and those happen. But then you think about it as well, and you say, well, Denzel Ward could have probably had 2 picks that he dropped as well. And you look at the game in its entirety and say, if those 3 plays go the other way, maybe that's a much different defensive outing overall. But I agree with you. Jim Schwartz talked about really throwing a change up this year and maybe not making coverages so obvious. And that Dak check that ended in the Brandon Cooks touchdown really resembled to me what Matt Stafford did to them last year. So I'm hoping that as we move forward, because I think that the Browns as a defensive unit have all the talent in the world, but you need to create at least some hesitation from the opposing quarterback. And we just haven't seen that when they're just lining up and saying, we're going to beat you. So I would love to see that change up that Jim Schwartz mentioned. And I'm hoping that that's implemented here in week 2.
Nick Karns, co-host of the Barking Browns podcast, and I'm going to step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break, take a closer look at the Browns and Jaguars matchup. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s, $10 each, 10 times multipliers, 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100, and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns with Nick Karns from the co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. Take a look at this. Why Deshaun Watson's Week 1 performance contains legitimate concerns. This from the Dogs, a Cleveland Browns podcast. Offensive line and receivers allowed 18 pressures on 56 dropbacks, 11 hurries, and 7 quarterback hits. PFF attributes 0 sacks to the offensive line. Receivers had 4 drop passes. Watson went under pressure, 24 dropbacks, 5 of 15, 20 yards, 6 sacks. Watson, when kept clean, 32 dropbacks, 19 of 30, 149, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Basically, it was just saying he could not find his receivers, whether he was pressured or not pressured. When he was pressured, he was holding the ball too long. The 6 sacks they put on him.
It's a tough outing, especially from Deshaun, and I think that's been the highlight of Week 1. I went back and watched a lot of it, and you could just see that Deshaun's not trusting his eyes. He's not acting with anticipation right now, and I think those are things that are concerning, but can hopefully be cleaned up. To me, the biggest concern I saw is a complete lack of ability to throw the deep ball. And we heard early on before the season started that Deshaun's velocity was up. It did not appear that way. There was a pass that was almost picked off that he threw that really needed to have some more zip on it and didn't. Overall, very concerning. I would like to hope that as Deshaun settles in and granted that they did revamp the whole offense, so maybe they can get some continuity. Deshaun can anticipate more, can trust his eyes more, can look at this film from week 1 and say, this is what I missed, this is what I need to do when I'm in that situation again. I'm hoping we can get there, because they really did build this offense to try to accentuate his strengths.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I just thought it was the right move. I said it all along, and boy, it was something got lost there. Now, maybe it was that they didn't play in the preseason. You want to have that conversation? All right, maybe we've gone round and round about that. They probably should have played a little bit. Well, hindsight being 2020, I'm going to say, yeah, they should have played in the preseason. Maybe it would have alleviated some of the mess that was week 1. This is from Pete Prisco, CBSSports.com. Week 2 picks. He has the Jaguars defeating the Browns by a score of 24-19. Jaguars blew a fourth quarter lead, losing to the Dolphins, while Cleveland was mauled at home by Dallas. Deshaun Watson was awful. This is a tough ask to bounce back on the road against the Jaguars defense that slowed Miami. Look for Jacksonville to get into the win column. When you look at this game, what are some of the things that you think are keys? What do you need to see?
Last time the Browns saw Trevor Lawrence, it was at home, and they picked him off 3 times. We talked about Denzel Ward dropping those 2 picks that he could have had on Dak. I think you absolutely have to lean on both your secondary and your defense as a whole. That was a big part of their victory over the Jaguars last year, and I'd like to see it again. I think the Browns definitely did pressure Dak, but aside from early in that game, they didn't really get to him. I think this is really centers around saying, this was an elite defense last year. This needs to be an elite defense again. Even if we set the expectation that the offense is going to take some time to find their groove, then the defense needs to show up. The special teams needs to show up. You can't allow a punt return touchdown. You've got to clean that up, and you've got to be the dominant defense that we know the talent can play up to. And I think we saw multiple games last year where the defense really did a lot of the heavy lifting, and we need to see that again, because I just don't think from week 1 to week 2 we're going to see a night and day offensive change. I think they definitely can make progress, but we're just in a situation right now where I think we can all admit it's going to take some time offensively.
Yeah, it's the standard football things. They had way too many penalties. You got to clean those up. You can't be this offense cannot be behind the sticks. They can't be 1st and 15, 2nd and 13. They were that most of the first half, which is why they had 58 yards. I think they had more penalty yards than they had offensive yards at halftime. Can't turn the ball over. You have a dominant defense. You can't lose the turnover battle. That I busted Joe Flacco for that last year. I'll bust Deshaun. You cannot turn the ball over with this defense and put them on short fields. And then, the other thing is special teams need to be a strength. And that special teams touchdown is what put the final nail in the coffin.
Yeah, it was just a total team failure. I think I know the quarterback gets a large portion of the blame, but you can look at every unit and every facet from coaching to all sides of the ball and say there were things that they could do better. And I think the brightest note I have is that we know there's a lot of talent on this team, and we know that you have the coach of the year and the assistant coach of the year from last year. I think these guys do know what they're doing. There's going to be clunkers sometime. I'm hoping that they can alleviate all of these fears by bouncing back in week 2.
Yeah, and to your point, that offense has to – it almost like they couldn't decide what the offense was going to be. You got to decide what the offense is and then go and game plan accordingly. Don't try to be a little bit of everything.
Right. Build up Deshaun's confidence. Give him some layups. Maybe emphasize the run like you used to. There's pieces here that can hopefully get the quarterback in rhythm, and that needs to happen right now. It seems like Deshaun and maybe the offensive line just needs to be built up a bit with some success in front of them. So I imagine we are going to see a game plan that involves more running. I imagine we're going to see a game plan that involves more screens, more easier passes, things that just can help you build some confidence as you go through the game.
I want to see Deontay Foreman more as well. I was surprised how little they utilized. And I know they didn't run the ball a lot early, but we need to see more of him.
Well, you talked about the preseason, Adam. It was like Foreman was one of the offensive spotlights there for a little bit. He had a really nice receiving game, and I thought he looked he was bouncing off of tackles, and that was somebody that you said, okay, I can see the promise here. And I know we talked about it before about how when Deuce Staley was his running back coach, that was his most successful season, and it was honestly puzzling to me to not see Foreman at all.
Unless maybe he's a little more banged up than they let on. Nick Karns, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Nick.
Thank you.
Nick Karns, make sure you check him out, co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.